Vajradara Suma Timunisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Suma Timunisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dhagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sunginawa Tsedos Sechi Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshune Yela Sambe Deden Malupa Gemel Hungir Rubra Chingil Soni Sodan Dikdun Shabe Tse Dunginamke Yinsu Lekshun Labchen Soni Yonsu Zobadan Cherani Dun Chamra Chingilo Chancho Parge Ninsen Tukun Tu New Peme Siudru Lekshun Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen de la Drubra Chingilo Dagilo Na Chola Chokpadan Chemin Samjorngemba Shiwat Chodan Tumbe Dudun Malupa Bemel Hunge Drubra Chingilo Dorna Tingne Tsera Tamchedan Techi Pardune Kab Tamchetu Rese Kemne Lama Keleme Tukche Chingidala Siksuso Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dajala Jetsun Lame Tuje Rabgongne Kudan Sungi Nawa Dralmetu Nyamsunyongwe Kesan Tobrasho Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Drame Chekipe La Longchechi Sadan Lamgi Yunde Rabzone Dorje Change Koba Nyur Tobasho Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Ye Tenyerme Chiktu Chingi Lu Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Ye Tenyerme Chiktu Chingelo Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Svoha Sashi Pugi Chushi Medo Chan Rirabling Shini De Gembadi Sange Shindu Mikde Ulwargi Drugunamda Shingla Choparasho Yidamon Guru Radna Mindrala Kamniriata Yami Sange Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chushi Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchira Sange Drupar Shu Sange Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chushi Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchira Sange Drupar Shu Sange Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chushi Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchara Sange Druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Namo yalhaye ke da ludan jinge rubundadami kenamdan ruwakunge dhanam chitsampa thamche ke tu dagi cheten to.
Good morning. I'd like to begin today with two stories. I was thinking about which one to start with. A few years ago, I was in Brazil, and in this time, there was a very delicate situation, unstable, very complex, on a socio-economic, political level, and there were many demonstrations on the street. And not living there, I had a different way of seeing things, from outside, and seeing all these demonstrations that were happening, and seeing what I saw in the newspapers, talking to my friends and living there. I realized that there was a very, very strong level of unhappiness and of pointing fingers and pointing the fingers at shadows and things that really complaining about things that were going wrong, but there was a dream missing. It was unclear what everyone wanted. So what happened is, from my point of view, is that when you go against a problem, when you recognize the shadow, but you don't have the perspective, the sight, the view of the light, then you stay in the darkness. And at that time, I said we need to allow ourselves to dream, because one thing is demonstrating against something, and it's something else to take your stand for something. So the question I asked the people that I knew, I asked them, what's the Brazil that you want? What are you dreaming? What are you dreaming? And dreaming about? What would you like? And at the time, I talked to a friend who's actually the owner of a very important daily newspaper, very involved in politics and the socioeconomic problems and interests of Brazil. So I asked him, what's the dream? What's the dream for Brazil? And he said, we're all going against something, and I think I agree with what everyone's complaining about, but if we don't know where we want to put our energy in, we're going to just stay there complaining. And so he organized a meeting. He organized a meeting among the journalists of this daily newspaper, and I was present. And the point of discussion was, what's the Brazil that you dream of? And there was actually a special report done, published in this newspaper about this. But what I wasn't expecting was how difficult it really was, how difficult it was to dream. That most of us, we don't have solid basis to say, I dream of this, and so we stay in the shadows of shadows that we already know, instead of going towards the unknown, without the certainty of being able to reach that goal or not. A short time ago, I read a book from a psychologist, and he said that change is very difficult for people, even if it means getting out of something that's detrimental and going towards something that's beneficial. It's still difficult for people. And sometimes I translate this dynamic as with this idea that often for us the solution seems more tiresome than the problem itself. I mean, the problem I already know. I know how to face it, more or less. I'm not that bad. I'm getting by. But having to change, having to look for a solution for something that might go well or might not. So I better just stay where I am. this was one view, one story. Years before, I was about 18, something like this, and I was living in India since I was 12. Maybe at the time I was actually even 16 years old, not even 18. But I had already been in India. I'd already been in India for many years, dedicating my life to the study of Buddhism, and thank goodness, I never had moments of crisis, thinking that I had made a bad choice. But around 16 or somewhere around there, I did have a kind of inner turmoil, some inner crisis. It lasted about a year because I'm I'm slow. I'm really slow to it takes me a long time. A long time. I make a decision I and then I and then I go for it. But before making that decision, it takes a long time. And maybe somebody from outside can't see this, or others think, "Oh, you don't listen." I'm listening, but it takes me a long time to actually get to a decision. And at the time, I was what really got me was a passage by Lama Tsongkhapa where he says the first step to towards nirvana or enlightenment, he said the first step is it, this passage from Lama Tsongkhapa, which can be translated as something like having familiarized in such a way, having familiarized with the previous virtues, having familiarized oneself with the preciousness of this life, one's own impermanence, the certainty of life, the law of karma, samsara in general, etc. Once one doesn't have any more attraction or pleasure, pleasure, not even for an instant, for samsaric pleasures, for mundane things, and night and day, in every moment, night and day, keeps this desire to get out of the cycle of suffering of samsara. At that point, it's often translated as renunciation, but we can also translate it better as this certainty of being able to emerge or get out, or love for oneself. So then this mind has been generated. When I read that verse, I thought, then let me just go home, because my crisis was about this. I like Buddhism so much. I'm really happy with what I'm doing. I'm content. I'm happy, but I don't I don't know if I believe in this objective. Is it really possible to get out of the cycle of suffering and reach a state of peace, the so-called nirvana? Is that really possible? And my thought at the time was, maybe in the past it was. When I read the stories of the past masters, but now when I look at myself and I look around me, I think, doesn't seem so viable. And my crisis was, I'm spending my life dedicated to something, something that I don't believe in. Not that I don't believe it in the sense that it's a lie or it's not there. It doesn't have its foundation, but just was it possible was my question. And then I had 3 very important meetings. One was with Lama Michel Rinpoche, and then with my philosophy teacher, Yeshe Tupten Rinchen, and also His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And each one gave me a different idea about the same thing. And the conclusion was, first of all, it's a gradual path process. It's not black and white. It's there, it's not there. It takes time to generate that inner state. And the second thing is it's about desire. It's about having clarity about what one wants. And the third point, is it possible to eliminate a little bit of the shadow? My master Geshe Tujin Rinpoche, Geshe Tujin Rinchen, he said, is it possible to eliminate anger? Yes, I've seen. I had other stronger mental defilements, and anger was never one of my weak points, but I've seen people around me, people, with effort, been able to eliminate and decrease their anger. And he asked, up to what point can you diminish your anger? Can you say, okay, after this threshold, you cannot diminish the anger anymore? No. So, I mean, the real threshold would be that nothing makes someone get angry. And the next question was, is it possible to open up one's heart even more, be more altruistic, love one more person? Yes. And what's the limit there? When one is able to love unconditionally. So these 3 points together showed me that it's possible, but it's something gradual. What does that first antidote have to do with this second one? That one of the most important things for us in our life in general, and when we talk that within Buddhism, of something fundamental, and the first path of the first step of the path in Buddhism is having clarity, desiring, wanting, really where is my objective. So we need to allow ourselves to dream, to dream a state of peace, of love, of harmony. We use this term in Buddhism, Buddhahood, and the historic Buddha Shakyamuni, and others reached this state. When we say that we want to reach Buddhahood or the state of Buddha, it's not the state of Buddha Shakyamuni. It's a state where one is completely free from every mental defilement, dissatisfaction, anger, envy, and to live in a state of constant joy, harmony, peace, and love. I mean, it's something we would want, isn't it? But the first question is, do we really believe that it's possible? Because I have this sensation sometimes that when we bring the view of Buddhism in the West, and I talk about the Western world because I have most contact in the West. I have taught a few times in the East, and it was difficult at first because I'm used to, exchanging. As I'm talking, I'm observing your faces. I see that that there's this kind of exchange. And I remember once I was teaching in China. I was with a group of Chinese, because culturally speaking, there's a different, they manifest their feelings and ideas differently. So I couldn't understand if they were understanding, if they were liking, how they were receiving what I was sharing. I mean, I can't talk about the whole world. Let's talk about this reality that I know best here in the West. But I see that there's this tendency to see what's not going well, to point the finger towards the shadows and everything that's going wrong, without bringing in any light. So, I mean, the national pastime means criticism, that we should make it an Olympic sport. Who's able to criticize the most, the best, and the fastest. So one thing is having, self-criticism or being a um, self-criticism about one's mental defilements, and then we're really maybe too heavy on on ourselves. We could say, "Oh, I'm so bad. Look, I do this," and we're like self-flagellating. No, instead, I mean, it's really important to see where there are problems within, but the energy shouldn't be towards the sickness. It should be towards our state of health. Shouldn't be against the energy. Shouldn't be put against the shadow, but really towards the light. Then naturally, if I bring in light, the shadow dissipates. If I generate a healthy lifestyle and I do what my body needs to be at balance, the sickness naturally is cured, isn't it? But even there, we have this tendency normally, when we talk about physical sicknesses, for example, to put energy against the sickness or towards health. What's our tendency? The most common tendency is to go against the sickness. I always remember, and I hope that sooner or later we'll be able to apply this. It's said that about 3,000 years ago in ancient China, the medical tradition was based on family doctors. Doctors were responsible for a certain number of families within a town, and that doctor was paid by the families. I don't know, monthly, bi-monthly, I don't know. He was paid in a constant way, as long as they were healthy. So if you were healthy, you would pay your doctor. And if you would get sick, you didn't have to pay your doctor anymore. So the doctors were responsible for health and not for curing sickness. So, for example, maybe at the change of the seasons, for example, from winter to spring. And the doctors would go door to door saying, okay, spring is coming. You need to eat like this. You shouldn't do like that. Be careful about doing this and doing that. They're really taking care of the people's health. Because if the people got sick, then they wouldn't be paid. And I have asked myself, what would happen if we had a similar system? For example, the association, the union of doctors would at that point, would they lobby against products that are detrimental to our health? It would change completely, just to give a different perspective of what that would mean. But today, the problem is that doctors and others, make money taking care of the sickness. And 3,000 years ago in China, it was the opposite. But the problem for me here is not about the medical system. I mean, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about ourselves and how we face our own lives and how we face our family reality, our reality with friends, at work, the social reality, the environmental reality, etc., etc. And in Buddhism, there's this tendency to talk about suffering, the cause of suffering, etc., because it's necessary to have a clear diagnosis, to be able to apply the light. I need to be able to see where the darkness is. But it's important to not just look at the shadow without forgetting that the energy then should be put in the light. So something fundamental at the beginning is asking ourselves, really, really, what am I doing? I get up in the morning. I try to satisfy my needs of survival, sleeping, eating, having what's materially necessary to get by, and I mean, do I live my life as an end? Uh, Do I live my life as a means, or
Ogni interazione
or as an end in and of itself, or as a means? I mean, nothing ends in nothing. Everything brings transformation. Every day that we live, from the moment we get up, or the thoughts we have, how we eat, to the interactions we have, things we see, that we hear, everything that happens, in the 24 hours, that's what determines our life. These events, these interactions, and we're not indifferent to what we live, what we do, etc. So beyond what I do beyond my survival, let's say, the way I live my life, what direction is that taking me?
Una volta mio maestro,
Once my master, again, Lakpala, one of the most important people for me, we were in the south of India together, and looking outside the window, there were some cows grazing. I don't know, those of you who've been to India, certainly you've seen the cows free in the road. We were in the countryside, really the countryside of the countryside, really far from anything. And sometimes as a child, I wanted to go swimming, and the closest swimming pool was 2 hours by bus. Sometimes I'd go. So he looked at the cows and he said to me, "You see, if we live only to survive, looking to avoid displeasures and suffering, and trying just to obtain pleasures, what difference is there between us and a cow?" I said, "Explain this to me, please." He said, look at that cow. When it's very hot and sunny and there's some shade, what does the cow do? Stay in the sun, or go under the shade? It goes under the shade so it avoids suffering. If as he's grazing, there's fresh grass or dry grass, where would he go to graze? He goes to the fresh grass. So he looks for pleasure. I mean, the only difference between us is we're more complicated. But if we live our lives trying only to gain pleasures and avoid suffering, there's not much difference between us and cows. Not that it's a bad thing to be a cow. I mean, nothing against cows. They're a beautiful animal. But the main point is, we have a particular characteristic, this ability to imagine the future. Let me give you one more story just to unite these ideas. Once a doctor, we were in a conference in Holland, and I was talking to this doctor, and he used this example that I really liked. He said, imagine a zebra that is grazing. The zebra is relaxed, grazing, eating quietly. The heartbeat is slow, gently, happily grazing. And then at a certain point, the lioness arrives. Remember, it's the lioness that hunts. So the lioness arrives. What happens to the zebra when the lioness arrives? This is the heart goes racing. He starts running to run away from the lion, the lioness. At a certain point, the zebra, he sees, okay, a gazelle goes by, and then um, uh, he's able to, distract the lioness and is safe. And it's said that it takes about 5 minutes for that zebra to go back to a rested state. And my question is, what would we be like if we were in the same place as the zebra? Okay, the lioness arrives and we run away. We run. At a certain point, we don't see the lioness anymore. Okay, maybe she's still running and I just can't see it. Okay, I keep running. Maybe I don't see it. And then I get home and I tell all my family members, you can't go grazing there. It's too dangerous. Today's the Today is the National Day against lionesses, and you can't eat that kind of grass anymore. And one goes to bed and has nightmares of the lioness. And every morning when you leave you can't leave at that same time anymore during the day because that's the time that the lionesses are out. I mean, human beings, different from other animals, and let's remember that we are animals. We have a characteristic that on one side is marvelous and is terrible on the other. This ability to relive our past and project our future. Let's remember also that when we project ourselves into the future and we imagine a danger, our body reacts in the same way as if that danger were tangibly in front of us. If I go grazing and I imagine that the lioness could be there, my cortisol goes up, my heart rate goes up, as if the lioness were actually there. So what happens is we are constantly in a state of alert because we imagine many dangers and problems. Maybe this is going to happen. Maybe that's going to happen. And this is one of the causes, and then I'm going to close this side note, one of the reasons for chronic stress that afflicts many of us. I mean, we've all gone through the COVID emergency, but the greatest emergency that our planet is living, I don't know if it's the greatest, but one of the most important health problems today is tumors, cancer. It's a very serious problem. It's not a joke. Among the various causes, it's said to be the chronic inflammation, and what's one of the greatest causes of chronic inflammation is chronic stress, because stress creates the increase of cortisol levels, and keeping the cortisol up creates that chronic stress. And what creates that spike in cortisol, for example? Or is it something real that's actually a real danger, or something really happening, the mental loops in our minds? Because really, let's say the truth. Is there anyone who really lives in a state of danger? Like you do something very, maybe at work, you do something very dangerous, or you leave your house and you're really afraid of your physical well-being. Or maybe you do things that are dangerous because you like the adrenaline. I mean, our lives are sure, they're safe. They're safe. But even if our life is safe, within we create many dangers, uncertainties, about relationships. What's that person going to think about, this, that, and the other? How am I going to do this or that? And that uncertainty generates tension, and we live it like a danger. The imaginary danger our body sees as an actual danger. And so this, I heard this just a short time ago. When, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. When we are in danger, like the zebra in front of the lioness, our body physically, after about 90 seconds, so after that first alert that was recognized, after about 90 seconds, with the body is self-regulates and asks, is that danger still there? Yes, the danger is still there. Okay, more cortisol because I need to keep fighting or fleeing. But once that danger is no longer there, the body naturally produces um, um, of the hormones to calm the body down. So the body goes back to a natural resting state when the danger is no longer there. When the danger is mental instead, I lose my job, or my partner leaves me, or this happens, that happens, or I have a sickness that doesn't exist. Yesterday I heard about a person who doesn't leave his house only he can't leave his house for more than a couple hours because it lives in the fear that some migrant is going to start squatting in his house. This is so when I put my paranoia and fear out there, and my body sees it as a danger, and just one stays in that loop, even maybe for years, creating this chronic stress. So one asks, so looking towards the future, this ability that we have, is it positive or negative? It's neither nor. It really depends on how we use this ability of ours, because that same mechanism that allows us to realize marvelous things, the most amazing things that human beings have done so far are based on our ability to imagine material things that were created, philosophies and meditation techniques, everything that man has done started from the ability to think of it. Imagine, you dream of something, you imagine something that has not yet come about. And then how to do it. It's a marvelous quality, but it becomes important for us to use it to our favor. And the point that I wanted to emphasize today is about, what do I want? Allow myself to dream. If I met the genie and the lamp, like in Aladdin, for example, what desire, what wish would I have? What would I ask the genie? I always imagine this meeting, but with the genie, the lamp, but a little bit different. Let's imagine that we do meet this genie and the lamp, and it tells us, instead of having 3 wishes, this genie is different. It says you have 2 choices. You can choose A or B. Only these 2 possibilities. That first possibility, you need to imagine everything that you'd like, externally, materially. Let's allow ourselves to dream a little bit. How would you want your body? Taller, shorter, thinner, fatter? How would you want your nose or your hair? If you're a man, you want to be a woman. You're a woman, you want to be a man. How you want to be younger? Imagine the body that you want, and your house. Your houses. What kind of houses do you want? And your means of transport, your cars and boats and planes. Bank accounts, or maybe you like to own entire banks because the more desires we have, then the greater our bank account needs to be to manage all of this. What about all the people in your life? What about your job? Do you work or do you not work? What kind of job? And in all of these too good to be true offers, here it is. The genie says in that first option, you can choose everything you want outside, but inside you stay you. Your fears are your own. Your traumas, you bring them with you. Your personality is what it is. Internally, nothing changes. I mean, it's up to you to make the changes afterwards. But you know, and then and then once you explain to the genie what you want, that's your choice. You want Porsches, then you can't go and say you want Maseratis. I mean, this is what you've taken. So instead, the second choice, choice B, your body is what it is. Materially speaking, if you have a large, if you have a large bank account, or if you owe money, that's what it is. And the people around you are the ones around you. But I can offer you inner wealth. So your life outside is the same, but I can take away your fear, your anger, your resentment. I can give you more joy, more presence, more physical presence, more mental presence. I can give you more concentration, more happiness. I can take away your anxiety and your fears. I can cure you of your traumas. The question, so here we're in front of this genie with these two options. What do we want? What would we choose? Those many say, can I have just a little bit of both? Let's say 10% of the first, 90% of the second. Okay, everything's fine, but it would be great if I could pay off my mortgage. But the reality is, if we're not convinced about the beauty of the second choice, it's because we don't really trust it. But my question is, I don't believe that this genie exists, unfortunately. But in our daily life, what are we working for? Which of the two desires, wishes, where do we project our life? Because inside, there is somewhere a kind of hope that says, I can be well. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and everything will be fine, and then I'll be fine. I mean, there is a desire of happiness within each of us, this desire and this belief that it is possible. But normally, where do we project it, and where do we put our energy to reach this? In external conditions, in choice A, or within ourselves in choice B? This is a question we need to ask ourselves. Not what do I want to have, or what do I want to do, who do I want to be, with regards to society, etc. But who do I want to be for myself? As time goes by, when I imagine myself in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, 50 years' time, who do I want to be? Do I want to be a a more calm person or a person who's more nervous? Do I want to be have more awareness or be more superficial? Do I want to be more satisfied or dissatisfied? Do I want to be someone who is full of resentment and anger or full of gratitude and joy? Do I want to have a good connection with others, or do I always want to be on the defense? These are just a few examples, some questions we could ask ourselves. What happens according to what we want, I need to live accordingly. It's like as if we asked ourselves, from here in 20 years' time, do you want to be healthy or sick? Is there anyone here who wants to be sick? If I say here, from here into 10 years, do you want to have high blood pressure? Do you want to have psychological problems and problems of anxiety, depression? No. Do you want to have diabetes? No. Do you want to have a tumor? No. Everyone will say no. Okay. Now, let's look at our lifestyle. What you do today, is there something that you do today that is going in that direction of sickness? A very simple example. How much sugar is eaten? Study upon study upon study, just proof of all kinds that our body is not able to metabolize the amount of sugar that we eat. A child of 6 years old today, on average, in the first 6 years, a 6-year-old has eaten more sugar in those 6 years than a 90-year-old in his entire life. So what does sugar do to our emotions and to our mind? Does it calm us down or does it activate? We know this. You don't need to be a scientist to know this. If I take a child and I fill him up with sugar, what am I doing? Am I exciting him or calming him down? No, I'm exciting him, and he gets so excited, and then I take him to the therapist, and because he's too hyper. Okay, of course, it's important to take care of a child who's hyperactive, but I need to take care of the symptom, but I need to take care of the cause too. So I ask myself, if I want to have a healthy life, I need to take care of what I do today, how I live today. Because what I do today is what builds my life day after day. What creates what I will become. And we have this incoherence. I don't want to be unhealthy, but I eat badly, I don't sleep well, I'm always stressed, and I don't do any exercise. You can see how these two don't match. The strange thing is that very often when we have these kinds of attitudes, we know that they're not right, but somehow we victimize ourselves. We say, oh, I know I shouldn't eat like this, but look at the society that I live in. I mean, how can I do differently? That's not true. I mean, it would take more effort for sure, but here it's important not only to dream of who we want to become, but how can I say? But I need to be able to empower myself so that what I become doesn't depend on others, but depends on me. There's a verse attributed to Buddha that says, I am my own protector. I am my own enemy. From this point of view, the question that I ask myself and I ask each one of you is, who do I want to become? Because very often, the way we act, the way we behave, not just about what we eat, but the feelings that we show, the words that we use, what we watch, what we listen to, every interaction that transforms us over time, we we live it as if we're victims. Let me give you a practical example. A few years ago, I went to Brazil, and I was at lunch with my um, with my grandfather, who died just very recently at 100 years old. I remember at the time, maybe he was 94 or something like this. And it was a difficult moment because um, some some um, he had an armed robbery at home. Without getting into details, my grandmother was having trouble sleeping after that, because they didn't feel safe. They didn't feel safe in their home anymore, and so created some problems. And changing their house at 95 would have been very difficult. He said, "You can't." You can't replant an old tree," that's what he said. I asked him that day, "Grandpa, how are you?" He said, "Fine." And I said, "And all the problems from the break-in, I know that it's difficult." He said, "I'm I'm taking care. I'm doing what needs to be done. Grandma's going to therapy." And he said to me, "But complaining is just a bad habit." And what I saw, and he had this was his motto his whole life. Problems need to be faced, solutions are found. You go forward, but there's no space for complaints. Often we complain, and one says, "Oh, don't complain." How can I not complain? Look what's happening. When I complain, that difficulty, that problem takes more space within and stays. For example, with my grandfather, he was very pragmatic. And one day he went to the doctor, and he had a small tumor. Went to the doctor, he went to the doctor. He had a small tumor. He went to the other surgeon. He booked his surgery, and when he told us and told his wife, it was already finished. There was no time or space to think, or how did it happen, and what if this, if that. No, finished. So what I mean to say is, when we take something and we just keep chewing on it and chewing on it and chewing on it. It happened to me, and what should I have done? Or maybe this would have been better, or that would have been better. That dynamic that we talked about before, that danger that we see as real, it comes out. It generates stress, etc., etc. When we complain, we are creating we always talk about the glass that's half full or half empty. Okay. So what's important is to fill up the glass, so put water in the glass. If my glass is half empty and I don't put any effort into adding more water, or I always have this feeling of not having enough, and in my future, I'm projecting this future that lacks, that's lacking, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the more I complain, the more I will complain. And the more I complain, the more dissatisfied I become. And the more dissatisfied I am, the more I suffer. I don't know if this is all clear. The opposite would be the more I rejoice, the more I thank, then the more satisfied I am. The more satisfied I am, the happier I am. So the question is, do I want to be a satisfied person or a dissatisfied person? Satisfied. So first of all, just close your mouth. I want to complain, bite your tongue. Why do I say that? Because our speech directs our thoughts. When I stop talking in a certain way, then little by little I stop thinking in that way. The more I speak in a certain way, the more often I think in that same way. But what do I want to construct with my life? Because it depends on us. Like when they asked Buddha Shakyamuni, what do you have to say about gods? In India at the time, the Vedic culture, there were the great gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Indra, and they asked, what do you think, Buddha, about the gods? Do they exist? Do they not exist? What do they do? And this was his answer. I'm not here to tell you if the gods exist or not, if there's a god or not a god, but I'm here to tell you that your happiness and your suffering depends on you and no one else. So I'm here to help you on what to do to increase your happiness and eliminate your suffering. So my point here is, we're not a victim. I never saw anyone with an easy life. Have you ever met anyone close up who had a life without any problems, where everything was always fine, where there were never any problems? Have you ever known a perfect family, or a family without any strange dynamics, without any unhealthy dynamics? I've never seen that. I have a beautiful family. My parents are they're more than friends. I mean, I have so much to be I have so much to be grateful for. And I remember I sent a message to my father. And I was really sincere. I said, reflecting on it, if I were to choose where to be reborn today, I don't have a father better than the one that I have now. I don't know any family that's perfect. A perfect family would be a family made of all Buddhas, because what kind of problems are there in a family? Because when you put a certain number of people together with an intense interaction after a certain period of time, or for a certain length of time, then all the mental defilements, like they add up. So one projects onto another, and these interactions can sometimes there can be contrasts. It's normal. And to who has a life without problems? Really, no one. So the point isn't about living a life without problems. The point is not about having a life where everything's going to be fine. Because then there's that rule that's very clear. One problem is resolved, and then another one begins. And if a problem doesn't arise, we create it ourselves. This is what I've seen so far. So the point is not imagining our future, desiring what we want, a life without problems. I want this person is to act like this. I want to have this, that, and the other. I want to have my retirement here, the villa there. I mean, we have many, many desires. And I'm not saying that they're not right. I'm just saying it's not enough. The point is how 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 am I able to face the situations in my life and go towards the person that I want to be? Because if I take the people, the wonderful people that I've had in my life, like Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, I mean, the greatest difference between Lama Ganchen Rinpoche and other people that I've met is not having an easier or less easy life, but the way they were able to face um, the situations that they encountered. That's what made the difference. Lama Ganchen Rinpoche had many, many difficult situations, complex situations, really. Things that most of us, we would still be crying about if they had happened to us on many levels. I saw this ability he had to live everything in a positive way, maintain his stability, never lose his own direction, his own free will. This is what I wish for myself and for you, for others. So, what do I want? For example, do I want to be a person who knows how to face difficult situations? Um, like when I'm in front of a situation that doesn't match my expectation, doesn't meet my expectation, because often we suffer more, not for what is happening, but for what we think should have been, or living a situation that should have been something else in our mind. Do I want to be a peaceful, harmonious person without feeling resentment, impatience, anxiety, anger in front of situations that don't meet my expectations? Or do I want to be, am I able to be free from all this anxiety and nervousness, even in front of situations that don't meet my expectations? Or do I want to just give in to my mental defilements every time the situation is not the way I think it should be? Let's say, for example, I have a very, very, very important doctor's appointment, and I do everything possible to be on time. But on the way, there's an accident. I remember once I was on my way to Brazil, and I I used to like to leave the last minute, literally with the counting the minutes, but this aside, I mean, now I've learned to not do it out of respect also for those who travel with me or have to take me. So that day, for example, I left early because I had this appointment in Brazil that I couldn't postpone. It was a prize that I was going to be awarded, and then I had teachings the next day. So actually, there was an accident at the beginning of this tunnel. Everybody with their cars turned off, and people standing outside. So I was in this situation. What do you do? My central point is not okay. Like not about how did you resolve the problem, but what are you transforming yourself into? Because if I'm in a situation that is not what I expected, if I react with anxiety and nervousness and anger, trying to victimize myself and blame others, I am becoming that more and more. Because the more I react in a certain way, more easily I'm going to react in that way. If I find myself in that situation, I ask myself, okay, how can I resolve? In that in that moment, I started analyzing. Okay, if I lose, if I miss this, flight from Milan, there there aren't any more flights out of Milan. I saw that there was a flight from Zurich. Okay, let's go to Zurich. And so I was able to take me there. But the point is, the way we react in front of a situation is that inner habit that I'm creating, and it's what I'm transforming myself into. So if I'm in a situation and and I don't wish this on anyone, to have a very important meeting, and you see that these conditions are going to have you miss that meeting. So at the getting to the appointment on time is not is important as how we cultivate either more patience or more impatient, more anxiety, impatience, or more stability, patience, etc. And this is one of the most important points, understanding that the various situations that we live in our everyday lives, there are different levels. There's a superficial level, like what I'm doing. I'm there, blocked on the road. Do I get out of the car? Do I call to say that I'm late? I look for a practical situation. So that's one level. The second level is inside. How am I living this experience? And this is valid for everything. As I'm cleaning my house, I'm talking to someone. The inner way that we live that experience is going to determine how we live that experience, how we determine it. And the third level is, how is that experience transforming me? Who was I before and who will I be after? And I invite you to really think about this with attention. Because, sorry if I say it like this, but soon we're going to die. And the problem is not dying. The problem is living badly. I think that the very least that we should hope for is to die a better person than the person that was born. Because if we observe, each one of us has aspects of our personality that we've carried since childhood. I mean, many aspects of our personality that we think we can think, oh, I've always been like that. When I look at myself, I get a little worried because when I look at what I can call qualities, I think I was born with them, and now I'm 43. I don't know how many other qualities I've been able to cultivate and develop, and I'm kind of living off of what I created previously. I joke like that. So what we bring to our the question is, beyond what I've brought to this life, what kind of person do I want to be when I die? And we don't have time to lose with jealousy, for example, with envy. Soon we're going to die. Even if that soon is 60 years, it goes by quickly. And so it's really, it's a question of looking at our priorities. And concluding that previous point, my priority is what I want to do, what I want to have, or who I want to be. The example that I've used in the past, I mean, what kind of old person do I want to become? Do you want to be, I'm talking about two stereotypes. So do I want to be the old one who's impatient and thinks about only himself, who's closed-minded, doesn't expect anything, is very rigid, can't accept any kind of change, is always complaining? Or do I want to be the person, the old person who's loving, who has a lot a lot of experience and has really cultivated love and wisdom, and so nothing gets them upset and pleasant to be with. I want to be that one. And depending on what kind of old person I want to become, I need to live accordingly. Because if I'm always living in anxiety and stress and complaining and generating conflict with others, then um, then that is where you're directing your personality, yourself. And so someone might say, no, when I retire, everything's going to change. That's not true. That's not true. We cultivate our personality over our lifetime, and as we get older, it becomes harder and harder to make changes. So we shouldn't be waiting for tomorrow. When today we have this introduction to Buddhism. So the whole path that Buddha Shakyamuni transmitted and then came to us through those who received and practiced, realized, transmitted, what we call a lineage that comes to us today. This is based on a principle, which is I want to be well with myself and with others, starting from what I am and not what I do. And I mean, this so-called nirvana, this Buddhahood. And when we look around and we see all these images, what they represent mostly are the qualities that we want to develop. So we should allow ourselves to imagine ourselves in 10 years' time. Imagine your life, how beautiful it would be. The family that you have, and as long as you're alive is what you have, your job, more or less. Many of us, our economic situation, maybe something can change a little bit, but unless you win the lottery, it's more or less that. But the main point is I allow myself to dream from now to 10 years, 20 years time. What would it be like if I were able to not react without aggression, or if I was no longer attached to how things should be, in my opinion, or if I was able to live every situation without fear, without nervousness? What would it be like if I were really able to connect with everyone with love and with wisdom also, without any kind of sense of hopelessness or powerlessness? Let's remember that we can't solve any world problem, but we can be part of the solution. It's really important. It's the same thing with ourselves. We can't resolve our traumas. We can't resolve our physical, mental problems from one day to the next. We can't just snap our fingers and resolve them, but we can be part of the solution. And when we talk about the world's problems, wars, environmental problems, social problems, we can't resolve anything, and it's not even our job. But our job is to be part of the solution. So from now until 10 years or 20 years or whenever, who do I want to be? How beautiful would my life be if I were more balanced, more joyous, more stable? And when I'm able to imagine this, I need to allow myself to see myself for a while and fall in love with that being, that person that I want to be, because the greatest strength that guides us is our own desire. When we have passion for something, how much energy do we put into that, for example? A lot, no? Once I asked someone who was um, very much in love, I asked, how often do you think about your object of desire? How often during the day? And the person answered, just once, but it's never ending. So when we're strongly like in love or taken by something, someone, um, how many sacrifices, quote unquote, are we ready to make? So let's imagine who we want to be, for ourselves and for others. Because the best thing that we can do for this world is to be a loving, balanced, happy person. This is what the world needs. But when I allow myself to cultivate this desire um, until I'm strongly in love with that person that I want to be. That's what I meant before with the phrase that I mentioned from Lama Tsongkhapa, when day and night, without every instant, when I just have in my mind this renunciation, it's possible. So we need to be able to allow ourselves to fall in love and with this desire, because otherwise, it's tiresome. We forget, oh, now I can't work on being a better person because I have to work and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. Now I'm on vacation. When this finishes, today's too hot and tomorrow, and now it's too cold. There are no excuses, because every action brings transformation. So if I don't go in one direction, I go in another. So not acting is a form of action, actually. And in this case, I'm just going to repeat one more time. It's so important to allow ourselves to dream, to have this passion for the better version of ourselves that we want to become. Without this passion, we just stay round and round what we already know. And we spend our lives trying to avoid suffering and going after pleasures, and we follow the law of a minimum effort, maximum comfort. And we just go forward like that. If it worked, then bring it on. And let me open up a side note here. This law of minimum effort, maximum comfort is very dangerous, because, for example, if I get somewhere where I need to walk up 5 floors of stairs because there's no escalator or elevator, what do? We take if I live if I need to take 5 flights of stairs, but there isn't an elevator. Do I walk up the stairs or do I use the elevator? I use the elevator, but then how does my body respond to that? Then I end up having to go to the chiropractor, and maybe I even join a gym so I can run on I run on a treadmill. Now, if I walk up those stairs, it's not because I want to be a victim and be hard on myself. No, I would walk because I would walk because I want to take care of my body and I want to, use it or lose it, as they say. If I use my body to do something and then I stop doing that thing, I lose that ability. Yesterday, I was in a meeting. We were like 6 or 7 people. At a certain point, there was something with numbers. We needed to multiply. It was really simple. It was, if I remember well, it was 20 cents times 1,000. No one had the courage to do it without a calculator. I said, oh, this is really a bad situation. How many of us are trust ourselves enough to count and do arithmetic without a calculator? No one. And I mean, use it or lose it. I mean, we don't feel sure about doing it anymore because we've lost the habit to do it. So when we're in front of certain situations in our life, it happens that we have to make decisions, for example. In that moment, we can't depend on external resources. We need to have inner resources on which we can count. If I'm in front of a difficulty and I need the strength to face that difficulty, I can't get it at that moment. It's something that comes from a habit that I've generated over a lifetime. It's like when my master in Tibet explained to me that the boy who brought the water up to the 5th floor and 4,000 meters in Tibet, 3,900 at the monastery of Teshilumpo. And every day there was this boy. I saw him once very early in the morning bringing water to the abbot, who was my teacher, about just going up, having the water on his back, walking up very, very steep flights of stairs. But I saw that down below in the courtyard there was actually a faucet. And I asked my master, I said, but can't we just bring the water in? I mean, it's not very difficult. And he answered, I never would have expected this answer. He said, if young people don't learn how to have constancy and effort for the simplest of things like having water, how will they have constancy and how will they put effort into their studies later? So that boy, he's not bringing water, he's training in constancy and effort. And later, he probably won't need to bring water, but when he'll need to study and meditate, he won't be afraid of hard work because he'll be used to it. The more you use an ability, the more developed that ability becomes. Our brain is like this, our mind is like this on an emotional level, on a cognitive level. The danger with the law of maximum comfort, minimum effort, every time we're faced with a choice, when we always choose the easiest route, and when we're constantly outsourcing or delegating what we could have done ourselves, little by little, we're going to lose the ability to do it, which may not be, doing that actual thing might be necessary. But like that boy, if he didn't bring the water, he would not be training in constancy and effort, which are two essential qualities in life. So we're constantly trying to see what we can outsource. And so we do this with physical activities. We've got cars and washing machines and um, even gyms. And now we're doing the same thing with our mental training. You know, soon we're going to have um, gyms for our minds. We're losing our ability to analyze, to research. And what worries me so much about artificial intelligence is not about losing work, is that we become stupid because we stop using our abilities. And unfortunately, when there are characteristics, our body and mind adapts very quickly to not having to work. And then it becomes really very, very tiresome. The ability to research, to analyze, to understand. We're losing these abilities when it's up to us to make decisions, to have judgment in situations. I mean, it's not that we can ask who knows who, and we have to take our own decisions. We will be less sure of ourselves when we're less able to face situations. We less sure of ourselves. We're also we suffer more. So what I do every day in my life, it really should be seen under the light of how that is transforming me and not what I'm actually doing. Someone might say, I go to work on foot. Isn't that tiresome? But yes, but then I keep myself healthy. And what I'm doing, um, I'm not putting in effort to get to work. No, I'm maintaining a healthy lifestyle and treating my body well. That's just important to me. So we assimilate, that we understand, and we can assimilate that we really are our own protector. Every choice that we make, everything that we do, it really conditions who we become. We are not the victim of anyone. And this is a fundamental step along our spiritual path. A difficult step that doesn't come from one day to the next. It's a gradual step. But to follow a spiritual path in a deep and real way, to be really dedicated to that path, we need to stop victimizing ourselves. Because as long as I'm the victim, then it's the fault of the world, and the world can be my boss or my neighbor or my child. And I don't mean to say with this that external problems don't exist, there aren't difficulties, but it's up to me. What I can do is up to me. How I face it is up to me. So if someone were to ask me, what is Buddhism? It's the union of three things. It's a worldview, a paradigm. Yesterday, we were talking about there. It's I said yesterday, the world vision. I was saying that in Italian, I was saying this paradigm is a vision of worlds, and I was corrected saying in Italian that's not correct to say that. They can't say that grammatically it's wrong to say the vision of worlds, and I said it's only grammatically incorrect because you don't have the idea of more than one world. But the point is that also is showing the view that you have of the world. And then we have So we have a worldview, we have a conduct, and then the tools that we use to um, um, to f- to f- to follow that conduct. These rules of conduct of everyday life. In the rules of conduct, for example, we should generate the six perfections: generosity and patience, enthusiastic effort. Um, um, concentration and wisdom. This is all part of behavior, conduct, and these the tools of transformation. There's the prayer and mantra, holy art, and meditation, the correct diet, etc. An infinite number of things that help us transform and go in that way. But it all goes around that desire that we talked about before. It's all based around that. So, do I want to be happy? Yes. And do I believe it's possible? Yes. I think it is. When someone asks me, Lama, are you optimistic or pessimistic when you look around? A difficult question. To be sincere, when I look at the world in a generalized way, it's difficult to be optimistic. But when I allow myself to analyze more deeply and I try to see every individual, at that point, I can't be anything but optimistic because I've never seen anyone and thought, oh, there's no hope here. Once, once I said, no, this person needs to be reborn, but but for one reason, because sometimes there are dynamics that are so even on a physical chemical level. I mean, the body is so used to, so every once in a while, like a reset would be useful. But even in that even then, actually, I saw changes that I hadn't expected. So, and when we know that the whole, the collective, is made up of parts, so the union, the society is made up of every single being. So if I'm optimistic and I believe in each individual, then I have to be optimistic about the collective. And we can do it. It's just important that we walk in the right direction. Let's remember that there's no hurry to arrive. Unfortunately, we want everything for yesterday. But the most important things in life are slow and gradual. So there's no hurry to get to our arrival point, but there's a hurry to start walking in the right direction. We there's no it's nobody's job to resolve everything, but we need to. Our job is to be part of the solution, even with the things that have to do with just ourselves. So Buddhism is a path about it's about loving ourselves, loving others, and having a coherent view of reality. There are many aspects, but at the basis, what holds everything up is that question that we asked ourselves at the beginning: what do I really want? Because there's also a danger to to get close to Buddhism and the philosophy, the practices, without ever really putting oneself in the game. And it's very easy to use spiritual techniques, philosophy, meditation techniques, or sacred art and healing for the same mundane reasons. For example, maybe someone who's constantly victimizing himself and it's other people's faults, and then in a spiritual context, it's everyone's fault too. Or someone who feels abandoned, and then even in the spiritual context, one feels, feels abandoned up until saying that the Lama abandoned him. Um, but it's fundamental to stop victimizing ourselves, but having the courage to look at oneself in the eye and and really say that that it's possible to do, and I can't stop fooling. I have to stop fooling myself. So where is my shadow, and where's the light? How can I bring in the light? What am I doing with my life? And never think, oh, my life is already made. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. No, we can't be victims of ourselves. We can do so much. We need to take the reins of our lives in our own hands and say, this is good for me. I need to cultivate this. This is bad for me. Let me set it aside. Not 100% because we'll never manage, but we need to start maybe 20%, 50%, small things that we see that we can do. And this makes an enormous difference, because this is important too. Where we see there's something that we do but that is bad for us. If I take a small part that I think I can face, I'm able to change that small habit. Okay, before I was never able to sit down and meditate or do this breathing exercise. And now I can. I wasn't able to, before I complained a lot, and now I complain less. Everything positive that you're able to do, little by little, celebrate it. In the sense that when we rejoice, we celebrate, then that imprint stays, it becomes deeper. And that also increases our self-esteem and gives us more strength to do more in the future. And among the 7 things that Buddha said we need to do every day, one is rejoicing. Rejoice. Our own things and what others do, it's virtuous. So let's set small things in front of us, like, oh, today I was able to eat less sugar. Wonderful. It seems stupid, and it's not about the sugar. But it's about my ability to do good for myself, and that has an enormous power. When I know that this is bad for me and I'm able to avoid it, what am I transmitting to myself? What message am I giving to myself? I can take care of myself. Like the first time I had to follow a diet, I had a health problem a few years ago, and the doctor told me to stop eating everything I loved most. At the beginning, it was hard. I lived it as a kind of condemnation. And what did I do? And oh, why me? As if there was some kind of sacrifice. Oh, but I like this, and now I can't have it. How am I going to live without mozzarella? These were thoughts that, and also orange juice that I always liked. I mean, just an infinite number of things that I couldn't have anymore. And then one day I had an inner click. And then I asked myself, why do I eat? Because I like it, or because I need to eat, really? I eat because I need to eat. If I eat because I need and not because I like, what should I eat? Should I eat what I need or what I like? I should eat what I need. So that's it. End of story. Nothing else to say about that. I am not a victim. I'm taking care of myself. How wonderful. And when the mozzarella comes to the table and I don't eat it, how wonderful. I'm doing the right thing for myself. There's no sacrifice there. There's love for myself. But it's important for us to celebrate the steps that we make. And this is part of this path, to abandon the small things that are bad for us and cultivate more self-esteem, have more faith that we can do it. Because together with the dream that we talked about before is believing that we can get there. Because no matter how great, I mean, if I imagine a beautiful dream but I don't think that I can realize it, it'll just stay there. Like once I remember I was at this meeting with many doctors, with our friend Rogier in Holland. He needed to defend his PhD thesis, his doctorate degree, and he had invited many doctors to discuss his thesis, and they were quite important on an international level. So those who participated in this discussion, I was the only one that had nothing to do. I wasn't neither doctor nor professor. So they organized a kind of mini conference where these doctors who had come, one had come from the United States, one from Asia, they were from important posts. So they had a small conference, and then they expressed what they shared something. And this one doctor talked about a study where they took different patients who had the same tumor. So they took all patients who were able to heal, and even after 10 years, there was no sign of the tumor. And the question was, among all these patients who used different techniques, very different healing techniques, what did they have in common? One did the treatment A, then B, C, but they all were healed. There must be something in common among all these patients because they all had the same result. So this, after years of research, the conclusion was among all the patients that they analyzed that who healed using different techniques, the only thing they had in common was that they all had the certainty that they were able to heal and they were following the right treatment. This is the only thing that they had in common. Otherwise, if they looked at the treatments, they didn't match at all. But they had total certainty that they had total faith and trust that they could heal. And I don't mean to say that the actual treatments and healing cures and treatments don't have any worth, but look how important the faith in ourselves is. And there are thousands of examples that we could give. People in war, or there's a Tibetan story that says that there was a famine in Tibet, and there was one family that was able to just go on and on. Is his father who put a bag hanging from the ceiling, and he said it was full of flour, full of the tsampa, the barley, and he would say, "Don't worry, we have food, but we're gonna." And one day when we won't have anything, we will use that. But now let's use what we have. And they were using. They were eating very, very little. They were hungry and everything. And But he said, "Don't worry, just eat what we have." And then one day, a mouse actually chewed off the rope, and that bag fell to the ground. And they all saw that there wasn't food in there, wasn't any flour, but it was just he had just filled it with something. They all lost hope, and then um, they succumbed to the famine. This is Tibetan story. So believing is essential. I can heal. I can heal from my past traumas. I can I can face my past traumas. I can heal myself. To do that, we need to really start rejoicing for the small steps that we are making. Otherwise, the huge steps seem impossible. And it's not about being arrogant, it's about self-esteem. And I'm convinced that we can all do it. We can live more harmoniously, more peacefully, joyously, with love, patience, constancy, joy. I'm convinced that it's possible. It's high objective, low expectation, and constant effort. Little by little, we'll get there. So I invite everyone to ask yourselves what you want, and once you have that clarity and you ask yourselves, can I make it or not? If I can take those small steps, I can get to the summit of the mountain. If you look at that mountain from here, can I just make one leap? No. 3 leaps? No, not even. But a small step after the other, even if you make 3 steps forward, 1 step backwards, sometimes we do stupid things. Sometimes we go off road, we take the wrong road, but it's okay. So it's possible. I can make it. This faith in ourselves is fundamental. And at the basis of the Buddhist paradigm, it's one of the most important points. There are 4 pillars. One is everyone is able to reach a so-called nirvana. Everyone has the characteristics to reach a deep state of peace, stability, and joy, because we're interdependent, because every transformation in interaction brings transformation. Every interaction brings transformation. So if we start interacting in a positive way, then that is going to show up more and more. But we need a quality that's often difficult for us, which is constancy. It's possible. We can all do it. But it's something that we need one day after the next. And we look at the Olympics in these days, for example. How much training have these athletes done? Did they train for a year? When we see what they're able to do, is it because that maybe they've been training for 6 months, or maybe after, maybe 6 months ago they decided that it's something they wanted to do? No, they've been training for a lifetime with constancy. And they show us that it's possible, and it's the same thing in our lifetime. It's possible. So I invite you really to reflect, to look again, fall in love with the person that you want to be, the better version of yourself, and look towards yourself and say that you can do it. You're already doing it. Without the burden of thinking that you need to have already reached your goal. No one has this obligation of having already reached your goal, but we should be walking in the right direction. That's all for today, for this morning. Now, this afternoon, after lunch at 3:30, we will have a ceremony, this practice called the taking of refuge, which actually it's the taking of refuge doesn't need much introduction in the sense it's when someone, after a relatively long path of a couple years at least, one feels that it's time to follow this life path, follow these teachings, this way of living, this spiritual path within this tradition. And I like to follow it and bring it to every aspect of my life. It's just when one formalizes this intention, one takes a refuge. I always like to do this in a more individual, intimate way, but over the last couple years, on a practical level, it's been difficult to manage. And so once a month, we've organized this. Everybody's welcome to come. And if you want to take this commitment, you can. It's a very serious commitment. It's not something like one. It's not that one says, "Okay, we're going to go out. We're going to start dating," but wedding is a different is something else. No, no. The taking of refuge is the wedding, and the further along I go, the deeper I go. So if you like to come, if you'd like to come, you're welcome just to see. If you've already taken refuge, you want to renew your commitment, you're welcome. And if you'd like to come and take refuge, come. It's at 3:30. I thank you for your presence, and I ask you really to reflect, take to heart what we talked about. Ask yourselves if it makes sense to you. If there's something that's been said and it seems right, good, try to integrate it into your lives and to put it into practice. That's what I'm asking you. So it's time for our dedication.
Losan tempe drume sasumgi drove munsel taktu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama dang dralme cheki pela longche chi sadan lamgi yunte rabzo ne dorje changi kopa nyurtob sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele kshin Ninsen taktu delek pe kuncho sumki chingi lop kuncho sumki ngodrubut sol kuncho sumki trashi shon. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni. Possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Grazie a tutti, buon appetito.